After days of hearings over at the lower house, today it's the Senate's turn to discuss the proposed amendments to the Constitution. National Task Force Deputy Chief Implementer Vince Dizon defends President Duterte's decision to keep his vaccination private. The government is considering to have vaccine passports to stop the entry of potential carriers of the coronavirus into the country. The NTF admits that the Philippines is still short of at least 148 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. And meet our newest kapatid, TV host and former volleyball champion Gretchen Ho. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Charles Lejano. Starting off today's newscast with a controversial economic charter change set to be discussed at the Senate later this morning. But in the meantime, Ria Fernandez tells us what happened when the House of Representatives tackled the same issue yesterday.
The House Committee on Constitutional Amendments is already on its second hearing on charter change. They're using House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco's resolution of both Houses number 2 as reference. But some lawmakers have yet to agree on which route to take in tackling the controversial proposal.
Hindi po ba it's very prudent na ang liderato ng komiting ito at o ng liderato ng kapulungan ito ay makipagtalastasan, no? Magkaroon ng pagkipag-usap sa ating mga counterparts sa Senate.
But Committee Chairman Alfredo Garbin Jr. says they have settled the matter.
We are now saying that Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, can proceed amending our Constitution, proposing amendments to our Constitution via the route of a legislation.
Yes.
Garbin is taking on a different tone. Unlike in the past, he no longer insists that the panel functions as a constituent assembly. Instead, he says Congress is only exercising its legislative and constituent powers. But Deputy Speaker Dante Marcoleta asks, are they even crafting any measure? He says the panel is purely exercising its constituent power.
Kasi sabi nila, we are just component elements of a constituent assembly. So we are not legislating. That is the exact term there.
We cannot decide right now whether we will
Mr. Chair, I'm not saying that we are deciding now,
or
Mr.
jointly.
Chair.
But if it were up to Congressman Fredinil Castro, cha-cha talk should be done at the plenary to avoid redundant discussions.
I am sure that all questions that we'll have to be asked in this committee will still be the same question and argument that could be preferred or will be preferred in the plenary session.
While lawmakers clash, economic managers are in agreement. They support easing economic provisions to push growth and improve public services. Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez says another option is to immediately enact measures such as create and amend the Foreign Investment and Public Services Acts.
The international community perceives us as the most restrictive economy in the ASEAN. So once they take a look at that, maybe they won't even take a second look at us.
For Albay Representative Joey Salceda, these measures should be complemented by charter change in order for the country to reap more benefits. But a vice chair of the defense panel, Muntinlupa Representative Rufy Viazon, says the Defense Department should be authorized first to identify strategic areas to be opened up to investors. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Here are the biggest stories from the dailies. President Duterte warns that the country will be in serious trouble if COVID-19 cases in the Philippines would soar to the millions. Pangmasa reports that if this happens, Duterte is considering another lockdown, which he also admits would be bad for the economy. Total coronavirus cases in the country currently stand at over 500,000. Metro Manila mayors are in favor of keeping the capital region under General Community Quarantine or GCQ. Filipino Star ngayon reports that mayors believe that easing quarantine in Metro Manila will only speed up the spread of COVID-19, especially with the threat of the new variant. And this from Business World, the IMF and UN have trimmed their growth forecasts for the country this year. This is on the back of the uncertainty over vaccine rollouts and quarantine restrictions in the country. IMF's GDP forecast was cut to 6.6% from 7.4%, while the UN expects a 6.2% growth this year, lower than its initial 6.3% forecast. NTF Deputy Chief Implementer Vince Dizon defends President Duterte's decision to keep his vaccination private. Speaking with 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang, Dizon said that the president is a quiet worker and works closely with experts before making any moves.
Alam niyo, ang ating Pangulo ay isang presidente at isang public figure na hindi mahilig sa gimmick. No, hindi siya mahilig sa, pagpapakita ng mga kung ano-ano. Ang gusto lang niya ay gawin ng mabuti ang trabaho, siguraduhin very transparent ang lahat ng ginagawa ng gobyerno. At lahat ng ginagawa natin from the very beginning. So, sabi nga ng Pangulo ay naaayon sa mga advice ng mga eksperto, naaayon sa siyensya.
Dizon also promised to be one of the first to get immunized with China's Sinovac vaccine. This will be the first to arrive in the country. Dizon also says that the vaccine brand does not matter as long as these have been recommended by doctors.
Opo, ako po, papayag po ako. No, lagong-lago na kung ito po ang unang-unang dadating. Dahil po, wala po tayong bakuna na papayagang ipamahagi o i-inject sa ating mga kababayan na hindi talaga dumaan sa masusing evaluation ng ating mga eksperto dito sa Pilipinas at pati na rin sa ibang bansa. So, sa tanong po yun, definitely po.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on coronavirus vaccines. Testing czar Vince Dizon is in favor of creating a vaccine passport to properly monitor the government's vaccine program. This may also be used as basis for further studies to check whether or not authorities can finally ease protocols against COVID-19. Dizon also announced that the Philippines needs at least 148 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to immunize 50% of the population by this year. He admits that due to the limited supply of vaccines worldwide, the government is forced to consider all available vaccine brands to reach their target. And the MVP Group of Companies chairman, Manny Pangilinan, says there could be a second rollout of COVID-19 vaccines from US-based Moderna. In an interview with One News' The Chiefs, Pangilinan assured the government that the private sector is ready to help them.
There could be a next batch of vaccines from Moderna.
Yes, sir.
Initially, we heard it's up to 10 million, but we're hearing that might be reduced. To what extent, we don't know yet. So we are participating in that potential order for vaccine. In our case, our employees, their dependents, and their kasambahay. So, kasama doon sa order namin.
The clock is ticking for COMELEC, as the poll body only has 8 months left for voter registration, and they're still way behind their target numbers of new voters. How is the COMELEC planning to boost registration as the pandemic drags on? Romel Lopez will tell us.
In previous years, this COMELEC office in Manila would be filled with new voters processing their registration. But now, it's nearly empty. A local election officer says they only average 30 registrations per day, way below their capacity.
On the average, 30 persons a day. Mababa yun kasi during the regular period, nung wala pa tayong pandemic, nag-average kami ng mga 75.
As of January 4, only 1.1 million new voters have registered out of the 4 million target. Due to the pandemic, COMELEC says people would rather stay home than register in COMELEC offices. COMELEC office hours are also limited from Mondays to Thursday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Dahil sa pandemya, bumaba yung capacity ng COMELEC offices. Kung dati nakakapagparehistro tayo ng 10, 20, sabay-sabay, ngayon, cut down na yan to, like in some COMELEC offices, isa na lang ang pwedeng mag-transact at a time.
COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez says they are now looking at extending operations to encourage new registration.
Pinag-aaralan ng komisyon yung pag-extend ng voting registration hours. Dati kasi 8 to 3 p.m. Ngayon, baka palawin patigin natin, pahabain natin, ano?
But for Camille Silvestre, a registered voter for reactivations, there's another reason for the low turnout.
Siguro nawala na lang din sila ng gana kasi bumoto ka o hindi, parehas lang yung parang yun sa parang wala rin nangyayari. O boboto pa rin kasi kailangan dahil sa barangay.
However, these first-time voters from Tondo are willing to brave it all just to be able to cast their vote in 2020 polls.
Kung boboto po ako, yung boboto ko po kasi yung mas mapapakinabangan sa bansa natin. Sawa-sawa na po kasi kami para pwede na kaming bumoto. So, at least meron po kaming, may ambag na po kami na kung sino yung alam namin karapat-dapat talaga. Yung ginagawa po talaga yung sinabi nila sa platform nila, hindi yung sa una lang.
Election officers have also asked the help of barangay officials for information dissemination. COMELEC is also using social media to educate more Filipinos. The agency assures the public that a system is in place to ensure that all health protocols are strictly observed. For News 5, Romy Lopez. We are One News.
A new face will grace your TV screens here on One News and TV5. Volleyball player turned TV host Gretchen Ho is the newest member of the Kapatid family. In a virtual media conference, Ho said she's excited to find growth in her broadcast career here in her new home. Ho also believes TV5 and Cignal's news, sports, and entertainment content are a good fit for her inner training. She will be part of TV5's primetime newscast, Frontline Pilipinas. And right here on One News, Ho will be hosting The Big Story every weeknight with Robbie Alampay. Gretchen is also set to produce and host her very own public service program called Woman in Action.
Natutuwa ako kasi ang daming platforms ng Cignal and TV5 as well as the MVP group of companies that I can really be able to grow and to be able to expand on my abilities and to even further my growth as a broadcaster.
Here are the stories to watch out for later today. The Makati Prosecutor's Office will conduct preliminary investigation into the death of flight attendant Christine Dizon. Taguig City will be hosting today's vaccination dry run. Health Secretary Francisco Duque, Vaccine Czar Carlito Galvez, and NTF Chief Implementer Vince Dizon are expected to attend. And aside from the controversial economic cha-cha, the Senate will also conduct hearings on the proposed SIM card registration, as well as the Prepaid Load Forever Act and the Rollover Internet Act. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us later at 10 a.m. as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on the Cignal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We are One News.